there was evil in them and the kind of things that they were capable of doing. I was scared for my life. I had no idea that I was being trafficked while I was being trafficked.
Oftentimes people in the Dakotas think that we're immune from issues like human trafficking, that human trafficking is something that goes on in larger cities, but not here in the Dakotas. And that's not correct. But it's not sweatshops in Thailand or brothels in Bangkok. What we have in South Dakota is more what I would call homegrown. Anytime you have large gatherings of men, that creates the potential for problems. These young women find themselves in a very difficult position oftentimes. There's no question that there's prostitution that goes on during hunting season. When you have large gatherings of men, there is going to be a market there for this sort of human trafficking.
I think that we have to go way back in history. You know, the government coming in, taking up our land. I think that is the point at which we became more and more vulnerable.
Oftentimes in rural communities, including in Indian country, the individual that wants to purchase the sex will know the person who is offering up the young child for sex. Sometimes, sadly, what we see is bartering. So someone will say, look, I've got a niece and you can have sex with her in exchange for a couple cases of beer.
It has to do with poverty. It has to do with alcoholism. Our families have broken down. And so I think all of that combined makes us very vulnerable.
Similar to the way, frankly, a pedophile would groom a potential victim. They will go out and recruit women to become part of these commercial sex trafficking rings. They'll make them all sorts of promises. And frankly, oftentimes be almost a father figure.
I was at a vulnerable point in my life, and that's one thing that these guys look for is vulnerability. They don't go after a woman that seems strong and seems like she's got everything together. I was going through a separation with the person I'd spent 10 years of my life with.
It will oftentimes start as, hey, why don't we earn a little extra money by doing this one time?
You numb yourself. The drugs that they'll give you, the things they'll do for you to make you think it isn't bad. Just because a woman seems like she likes it doesn't mean that she does. She's scared. It was the shame and then the fear, and I owed him money all of a sudden. He had me in a home I couldn't afford to pay for, a car payment I couldn't pay.
So you have an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old girl, she wants out. And the pimp will say things like, well, look, I also know you have a 12-year-old sister. You're going to continue to do what you're doing.
If I ever didn't do what he wanted me to do, he was going to hurt my children.
We've seen savage beatings. We've seen rapes. Even if initially they went willingly, if at some point they were the victim of threats, fraud, or coercion to keep them in that situation, then we have a prosecutable federal offense. Here's the challenge. The federal law enforcement in South Dakota, we don't have a lot of manpower. So what we are really dependent upon in those types of cases are faith-based organizations, domestic violence shelters, folks who are oftentimes the first responders.
It's an amazing feeling just to know that they're not going to hurt other women the way that they hurt me.
What we want the perpetrators of these crimes to know is that we're going to be behind every corner. if you're engaged in this sort of behavior in South Dakota, we're going to get you. And when we get you, we're going to put you away for a long, long time.